Thank you so much for that very kind introduction. Real heartfelt thanks to IHRD, Government of Kerala, for inviting me for the second time to this beautiful, beautiful part of the world. And I'm very, very happy that in collaboration with IEEE Kerala section, we are having this second conclave. I think it's easy to start something. It's much harder to sustain something. And a second such initiative really demonstrates the seriousness with which the Government of Kerala is taking this forward and the seriousness with which the IEEE community is joining in this initiative. So nice to interact with so many people who are engaged in what I think is a critical area of exploration in which maybe there are no easy answers. So I literally have 3 more slides after this. One on what I see as the key role, what I see as the influence, and what I see as the future. I am only one person. I am surely going to be wrong on some of these, but I do want to share what I think are the key things as we see them today. So the key role that I think Gen AI plays today, especially looking at it from a teaching learning perspective, others will be talking about other aspects, is in generating complex digital artifacts. I really like this AI-generated image created by Professor Subbarao, who's at Arizona State University. I'd like you to stare at that image a little bit carefully as you reflect on the next 2 points that I want to share, which is how instructors are currently using Gen AI to, I think what is unfortunately the case, all of us instructors are inundated with administrative tasks. So while our main role is teaching and research, we do get a lot of administrative tasks pushed on us. Especially if we are good at the stuff we do, then more gets put on us. That's typically how things work. So faculty are using Gen AI a lot in supporting their administrative tasks. With research, I know there's going to be further talk. We had recently an IISc, and similarly, many other institutions are putting out policy documents on how researchers can and should leverage Gen AI, right? And at IISc, there's a lot of independence. It's very hard to set a common direction. So the approach that we took at IISc was, here is an institutional default. If you, as an instructor, or if you, as a research lab lead, wish to define a different policy, or at a slightly higher level of organization, if you as a department decide to have a different policy, you are more than welcome to tweak or replace the existing policy, but as a default, as an institutional default, here are some guidelines. Hopefully it gets people thinking about it. We haven't done a great job of publicizing this IISc policy document, so if you want to look for it, you'll have to search a little bit, but if anyone is interested, please do ask me. I'd be happy to share with you. We hope it will provide a useful baseline in case you or your institution are considering this, right? And it's a slippery slope between how you use Gen AI. Many people, many conferences, many journals are perfectly happy to say, yes, authors are encouraged to use Gen AI to improve the quality of their language. It suddenly becomes a slippery slope where I, as a researcher, use Gen AI to help me in my literature search, or to serve as a colleague in ideating even whether this is an interesting research problem or not. But it's certainly possible to use these, and people have looked at this. As instructors, it's a really good opportunity to use this to create instructional materials that are of better quality than I might be able to create, leveraging all kinds of brilliant ideas that other people have. So it gets used a lot, for example, in taking raw text and converting it into slides that are attractive and engaging. And of course, for generating questions for assessment items. For students, we see students using Gen AI a lot for unproctored work, whether with permission, without permission. At IISc, we take the view that you are graduating in a world where these tools are going to be used, if they're not already being used, in an increasing way. So we feel you as students must be exposed to how to use them, where their strengths lie, where their limitations lie, and it's very, very hard for us as instructors to prepare a lecture about what this is. It's better for you to use it directly yourself, especially because the tools are changing much faster than we can prepare nice lectures, right? So it's extremely important for you to have hands-on experience. So at IISc, for example, I teach the Intro to Programming class. I tell my students on day one, this exists. I tell my students that if you use these tools, you could be more effective than a student 2 or 3 years ago trying to type this out by hand. So I, as an instructor, want to make you aware of these tools, but I, as an instructor, also want to try and help you get better than these tools, because they do have limitations. It's almost charming and lovely and joyful these days to receive an email from a student which actually has spelling mistakes, which actually has grammatical errors, because at least they didn't just copy paste it from ChatGPT, right? I have received emails from institutions requesting me to give a lecture. Dear sir, we would like to invite you to insert institution here. Well, it's just blindly copy pasted from ChatGPT. So it's so nice to see materials that are still at least partly crafted by hand. So with that as context, do you want to take a look at that diagram, at that image again, and see what I'm trying to get at with it? AI generated. What's wrong with it? It's trying to convey a powerful idea that yes, generative AI can compress a vast amount of information, maybe all of Wikipedia and of course much more, and make it accessible to you. Of course, it makes a bit of a mess in the process. That's one thing that the image is getting at. But you see the flaws in it. Who holds toothpaste like that? Is that even a human hand? Vaguely, but not really. And if you look very carefully, that's not really Wikipedia. Read it. It's got a spelling mistake. It's approximately Wikipedia, but it's not Wikipedia, right? So, I'm giving that as an example of something that I think we increasingly face. This is the influence of this. It will flood us. It is flooding us, and it will continue to flood us with a set of plausible, right? Unless you look at it carefully, you don't even realize it's a plausible hand, it's a plausible toothpaste, it's plausible Wikipedia. But it's not really, right? It's polished in some sense. Look at the lighting, look at the graphics. It's polished in some sense. It's plausible in some sense. But it can be wrong, and it can be wrong in very subtle ways. So I teach programming. This is like my hello world to check out a new Gen AI software. Those of you who understand a little bit of Python programming, I'm trying to write a little Python function to count how many digits there are in a given number n. So if I give you 123, I want the answer to be 3 because there are 3 digits in 123. And if you know a little bit of Python, you might think that the AI-generated solution down here on line 3 is perfectly reasonable. It's a very cute and clever Pythonic way of solving this problem. Take the number n, convert it into a string, which is a series of letters, and calculate the length of that string. What could go wrong? 472, it converts it into the string 472. That has 3 letters. Great, we're done. But it's wrong. Does anyone want to tell me why it's wrong? You need to understand a bit of Python. And you need to see past the seductive beauty and cuteness of the AI-generated solution to realize, what if the number was negative? It's a negative integer. So -1 will be converted into a string with the minus sign and the 1, and that has length 2, but -1 only has 1 digit. Wrong. Wrong solution. Okay? So, developing our students and our instructors, and in fact all of us, our ability to critique AI-generated artifacts is, I think, increasingly important. Of course, this requires time. Instructors in general have very little time. And it requires expertise, and a big worry for me as an instructor is my students will develop this kind of a relationship. Oh, AI has produced it. Oh, it's a sophisticated model produced by this fancy company sitting in California. I must bow down to it. And I am terrified of this because today's technology does not deserve this. It does require us to be critical. Look at these critically. As I said, I'm totally prepared to accept that they're often correct, especially for well-understood, well-defined tasks. But for tasks that are critical, where correctness matters a lot, this is, in fact, the worst response that our students could have. This is what I, as an educator, would like to help my students see past. I want them to use these tools. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying don't use these tools. I want them to understand what they do, but I also want them to understand their limitations. So, for the future, we expect these AI systems to get better. I mean, there are all kinds of techniques to help reduce hallucinations, right? RAG and a whole bunch of other techniques are there to try and help provide some. When AI produces some artifacts, you want to be able to justify why. RAG is one very nice way of sort of providing that justification. If you use tools like Perplexity, also a lot of these AI-enabled search engines, they do try and provide you references. Why is it saying what it's saying, right? But in general, you still need the instinct and the ability to critique these artifacts. So as a small example, I'll share a couple of examples of some of the research that we're doing, because I see IISc as a nice place to conduct research. I tell my students, look, dear students, I love you very much, but I really care about educational challenges at the nation scale. And IISc students do not represent where most of our country is in terms of the resources that are available. So I want to do experiments at IISc and try and see which ones we can try and take across to a larger scale. So at IISc, we've tried experimenting with what we call refute problems or refute questions, where we deliberately give students buggy code. It may not be AI-generated buggy code, but the idea is to develop this instinct to doubt and to recognize the bugs where they exist. Okay? And for humans, if you want to, apart from being critical of AI-generated content, to even prompt these things to produce the content that you want, there's an increasing emphasis on clarity. And that is to say, the ability to say what you want clearly. This is not the same as what is typically called prompt engineering, right? It is in the incentive of the companies making these products to make sure that prompt engineering is a thing that they do at the back end with a small number of very select people. But it's not something that everyday users should be forced to do. For everyday users, it should be in the most natural way of prompting. They should not be expert prompt engineers, but they do need to articulate clearly what it is that they want the AI to do. You have to be able to say it very, very clearly. Once again, I'll give you an example as simplified as I can make it. So on the first couple of lines, I'm using technical Python syntax to prompt my generative AI to write some non-trivial, certainly more non-trivial than the previous example that I showed you, some non-trivial Python code. It's supposed to return where in this list of numbers the minimum value lies. I want you to observe, even if you don't speak Python. If I just tell you, I'm going to give you a list of numbers and you have to tell me where the smallest number appears, that is imprecise. For one thing, what if that list has no numbers at all? Notice that this code, whatever it does down after line 3, it does something. This code or this AI doesn't pause and say, wait a minute, before I give you the code, let me clarify. What do you want me to do if there are no numbers in the list? It doesn't do that. It's so eager to help you. It's so eager to rush into a solution. Today's Gen AI does this. It doesn't pause to check that the prompt is unclear, is missing details. Another detail that's missing, if you think about it a little bit more deeply, what if the list has the minimum number 7? But that 7 appears many times. What do you mean by returns the minimum values index, the position of the minimum value? Which one do you want? The first one, the last one, some other one? Not mentioned. The AI makes an assumption. If you read the code, you'll realize what that assumption is, and it will return that. It's a reasonable assumption. I grant the AI that. But that is not the point. So once again, we wrote a paper on trying this out, what we call probable problems. The nice thing is, we specifically try to develop the ability of our students to do something that they never had a chance to do right from schooling. Because right from schooling, our students were always given problems with all the details. In fact, almost never were you given extra details because that might confuse you. So all the details are in the problem. And no problem in the real world looks like that. So we give coding tasks, these probable problems, that are in 2 parts. One, a problem statement that is missing some details. And then the second, a way to ask clarifying questions. I want my students to develop the ability to ask clarifying questions, to probe. That's why I call them probable problems. And when I was writing the paper, I was writing probable problems, my spell checker was coming in and saying, you mean probable problems? No, not probable problems, probable problems. I want to probe them, right? So I think this ability to articulate clearly is particularly challenging in our country. We are so rich in our diversity, in our linguistic diversity, for one. AI is trained on data that is available. That data represents only a fraction of the languages that are spoken, that our students are fluent in. There are, of course, a lot of initiatives by state governments, by the central government, and other private institutions to try and develop Gen AI that is fluent in multiple languages. All of these are excellent. Many of them have limitations. So humans, if they are to leverage these, if we are not going to have further digital divides, then humans and educators need to help our students get to the point where they can leverage. Clarity turns out to be much more important than things like grammatical precision. Although grammatical precision is often correlated with clarity, it's not all there is to clarity. So there are a lot of interesting ideas here. I hope some of the students find this framing useful to think in terms of other ideas. So I'll end here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Viraj Kumar, for your enlightening and visionary keynote address. Your deep insights into the impact of generative AI on higher education have provided us with a profound understanding of the challenges and opportunities. To express our deep gratitude and love, we would like to present you with a memento. I request Mr. Thomas K. Jimmy, Secretary, Strategic Initiative on Academia, IEEE Kerala Section, IBM Kochi, to step forward and do the honors.